Welcome to the Northeast Divide podcast, and thank you for joining myself and Anth as we are going to discuss a club in the Northeast this week. We're going to talk about Sunderland, and we're going to be talking about their basically their season and what it's going to look like. Obviously, they're going to kick off the season this weekend. So obviously Anth is very, very excited about that. I'm more excited about the Cellar Weekender at St James's Park, which I'll be attending on Friday. We are sponsored, as we have been for the last few weeks, by Mama Lane Crafts. They are still offering 10% off if you mention the Northeast Divide podcast to them in your order. There's a link in the YouTube. There'll be a link in your podcast app where you can make that order. There's a shop on Etsy, but you can also message them directly either through Facebook and Instagram. So do check them out if you want some customizable shit. But it's really good. Of course, I'm doing well, aren't I? Right. So we are
Nicely
here, of
put.
course. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, the wife will love that.
Oh, yes.
So obviously we're here to talk about Sunderland and kind of what their next season's going to look like. But there's been some other news on your side, Anth, that you'd like to talk about.
There has, and it's a lovely bit of news, and for a lovely fella, hard as nails on the pitch. Obviously, he was in my all-time 11 a few weeks ago. So yeah, he's been associated with the club since 1990. Signed from Portsmouth. We know where we're going here. Made his debut in a draw against Tottenham at Roker Park in 1990 in the old First Division. And they had such delightful players as Lineker and Gascoigne in the squad at the time after Italia 90. Drew 0-0 with that. I remember that game. And then he's been, over 9 years. He made how many appearances? Sorry, 388 Sunderland appearances, scoring 27 goals. He became club captain, legend off the pitch. He left for Fulham in 1999 and he later played for Burnley as well. So, yeah, Mr. Kevin Ball, the legend that is Kevin Ball, one of the hardest players Vinnie Jones ever encountered on a football pitch by all accounts, as we've spoken about previously. But he had a bit about him as well. He did. He had a bit about him. So he's been given the freedom of Sunderland. So, and well earned, because obviously he was at the club as a player. He was involved with the club behind the scenes as development coach. He was caretaker manager for a brief period. And also he was a club representative. So, yeah, and he was loan player manager as well. Then he left in 2022, February 2022, and I was a bit concerned at his departure and how he left, because there was no fanfare, there was no plot. Well, there was a few sort of announcements, and be sad to see him go and all that, but we should have done more to hang on to someone like Kevin Ball, I think, because he's just a wonderful, wonderful fella. Obviously, he does the little football talk-ins with the Sunderland supporters and what have you around various pubs and clubs in Sunderland, and it always goes down a storm. I've watched a few podcasts with him on. Obviously, loves our football club. And Kevin, we love you. You need to appear on this podcast sometime in the near future, please. So yeah, that's a lovely bit of news to start off with. Mr. Kevin Ball, hard as nails. What a player! What a geezer, Kevin Ball.
I will try my best to get my barber to butter him up to see if we can get him on the show. As Ant
Please.
says, yeah, we'd love to have Kevin Ball. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about Kevin Ball off the pitch,
No.
and I'm a Newcastle fan, so I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fantastic that he's been given that honour of the freedom of the city, and he's certainly earned that. For not just his time on the pitch, but his many caretaker spells in charge of Sunderland when you've needed to make those changes in the managerial position. But he was a fantastic ambassador for the club when he was there, of course, and yeah, bit sad that he maybe didn't leave with maybe some of the attention that he deserved. Let's talk about pre-season then. How do you think it's gone overall?
Oh, pre-season, it's all about building fitness up, isn't it? About new players when they do arrive. We've had a handful, but not in the positions that we would require. A lot of our supporters would say it's gone okay. I mean, obviously we faced South Shields early doors, Gateshead, Nottingham Forest, Eldense in Spain, and then we faced Blackpool. We won 1-0. Jack Clark scored. We also faced Bradford City. Not a great performance at all. That isn't going to be anywhere near our first 11, that particular team that night against Bradford. But I watched some of it and it was quite embarrassing at times. We were trying to play out from the back, which was very commendable, but we didn't have the players to do so, I thought. So we got beat 2-1 off them. Romain Mundle scored a goal. Get onto him a bit later. He's had a good pre-season. Could be one to watch. And then in memory of former Olympic Marseille owner Robert Louis Dreyfus, who is obviously the sadly deceased father of Kirill Louis Dreyfus, we played Marseille on Saturday and we drew 2-2. And by all accounts, we played quite well. Dennis Serkin got a good goal, a header. He was getting forward, building his fitness level up, which bodes well for the season, because when he's in full flow, he's quite the player. And I think we did miss him when he was out injured. So, yeah, AJ Scott, no, Adil Scott. I kind of pronounced the surname. Sorry, Ayush. I kind of pronounce his name. Adil scored a goal as well. It was a penalty to level up proceedings. So I'm sure you'll pronounce it better than that, and I'm sure your father is going to be absolutely horrified at that.
Well, if he's French, then yeah, he will be. But
Yeah.
I haven't looked or thought about that. Is there a reason why you played that at Valley Parade rather than the Stadium of Light?
You know what? I find it utterly bizarre because we didn't play any games at the Stadium of Light. I don't know. I don't know. There was a lot of disconcerting voices with regards to that, as in why down there. I know. I think 1,000 maybe made the journey down there, which is again commendable. Pre-season, so close to the season starting as well, fully, which obviously starts this Friday. So yeah, a bit of a bizarre decision. I don't really know the answer to that. But when you think about the Marseille side that played, were just about their full strength squad, and obviously it's Roberto De Zerbi's side now, and apparently they played really well. A lot of quality about them. Played with a lot of there was a lot of speed. There was a lot of sort of good passing and what have you. But we braved that, and apparently we pressed high and we did quite well. Created chances. Apparently we looked comfortable against Olympic Marseille, and Marseille are a good team. So yeah, we opted to be on the front foot. Apparently, by all reports that I've read, I didn't see any of the game. And instead of, in the past in pre-season where, well, even during the season where we've started off 100 miles an hour maybe, and then sort of died off a bit, and then, we've that's how it's been. It's been sort of fits and starts. We kept the pace going. It was pretty good performance by all accounts, and again, just what we wanted before the season officially kicks off this Friday. So all in all, a good pre-season, but we'll get into signings, won't we, or lack of signings in the near future. But yeah, very good performance on Saturday against Marseille.
Well, let's go into the signings first. We can address that ins and outs. What's been happening, and what do you need to happen? I mean, I know what you're going to say needs to happen before the end of the transfer window, because we've talked about it quite a bit. But I mean, would you say at the minute your squad looks stronger than it did going into pre-season?
Do you know what? I would say it does, because there's been some players who've been given a chance, and obviously he's given the players a chance. Obviously, he's got to have a look at the squad, see where he stands. And obviously, there's certain players going to go out on loan, but there's been some surprises actually. Elisa Miende, for example, has been a surprise package, a striker that obviously got farmed out on loan last season and didn't do ever so well, but he's showed some promise, and he can't be expected to lead the line on his own. On Saturday against Cardiff, it's going to be a difficult one. I don't know what kind of tactics, formation, or who he's going to play up top, or even if we'll have a new striker in place. But one of the biggest positives, according to all accounts, is news fans who I know have been and watched the pre-seasons. It's been Patrick Roberts. Patrick Roberts has been consistent pre-season, and he's played to his potential. Whereas last season, I mean, there was rumours of him leaving. There was a big transfer fee being bandied around by, I think, Southampton when he did it, a bit of form, and then he sort of dipped a bit. So to see him hit, the ground running pre-season, and hopefully, at a mean, rather than be only expecting on Jack Clark, who will be departing, I'm sure, sooner rather than later. On the left, Roberts may be the man to step up this season, and I really hope so, because when he's on his game and he's on form, he's a hell of a player.
Yeah, I keep saying this about Jack Clark. I can't see a Premier League side coming in and spending the money that Sunderland want for him. I just can't see it. I think he's had his audition. I think he fluffed his lines. We said this before, and I know it was like 8 months ago or what have you now, but he hasn't delivered at that level. I think he's looked very good against average championship opposition. I think even if you look at kind of the top end of the table, I don't think he's been consistent enough where a Premier League team who even a bottom to mid, Premier League side is going to look at him and go, oh, actually, yeah, he's worth a punt. So I think Jack Clarke stays with you this season. If he has another really strong season, potentially there's an argument there. But I think if he has another really good season, that'll help you. Let's talk about Regis Bris then, or Regis Bris. How do we feel? He's kind of been so far, and I suppose a lot of that will kind of be around kind of his playing style, but also the feel around the club. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
He seems methodical, and he appears calm, and I don't think there's going to be any histrionics at the side of the pitch this season. It's not about him. It's a big season for him as well as Sunderland AFC as a football club. Never mind for individual players, but as a football club, because this season may send out a marker or some sort of statement with regards to where we aim to be within the next season or two, because this is a big season. It's not a make or break season, but I think it's a big season, so it would be interesting to see how we do. But I think, me personally, he's been fantastic. I don't think he's here to be loved. I don't think he's overly concerned about that. But according to some of the players, I think Chris Riggs been making some nice sort of noises off the pitch with regards to his coaching methods and his approach to the younger players, etc. So yeah, and there was apparently a nice interaction with regards to AJI. I kind of pronounced that. I know I said AJ last week as to how I know him. He's been in central defence because obviously Big Dan Ballard's out. Big Dan Ballard's out. He's going to be a miss, but I think AJ will step up. AJ Elise. So yeah. So he was asked a question with regards to Regis about how he thinks he wants them to play this season and what advice he's given him. And basically it was 3 words: don't concede goals. Now, if that is the case and that was his no-nonsense approach and answer, I applaud that, because sometimes the less said, the better. And if you're shown on the pitch, you don't have to come out with a load of guff, aka Joey Barton. Oh, did I mention his name on this podcast? Anyway, I don't think it's about him. It's all about the team, and it's a big season for him, and he seems to have settled really well. So I've been so impressed so far. So impressed.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say about it's not about him, and that's quite important because I think that's what your last permanent manager just didn't get, isn't it? I think Michael Beale. It is about Michael Beale, and it wasn't it? Like some of the stuff he came out, the line he came out with after the derby, saying that it was good feedback, and it's like you've just lost to Newcastle 3-0 at home, and you're saying that that's good feedback. Like, I think that's just that's just not the right thing to say or do. And look, and I think it was always going to be an uphill battle after that game for him. But there was already discontent before then, to be fair. But I think looking at I think what I would say the biggest thing for me, and we talked about this the other week, didn't we? It just feels good around Sunderland at the minute. I think it just feels like generally like there's a lot more unity than there's been. There's a lot more kind of, I think, hope, but not misguided hope, not just kind of blind. Oh well, we're gonna do that. I've not heard any Sunderland fans kind of come out and say, "Oh, we'll get promoted this year." But everyone feels really good about the season. I don't know how much of that is just because Hummel keep like churning out like class merch for you, and that there's a feel good factor about that, or the fact that there's just almost like a feeling of like a new start, and maybe just more of an acceptance of this is kind of what the new Sunderland's going to look like. But also, I think that's been coming out in your playing style as well. That if you play the right football, fans will get behind it. I mean, especially up here.
I totally agree with you, 100%. I think realism stroke optimism is what I'm feeling with regards to my fellow supporters. I mean, obviously you go online sometimes and you enter some of these fans forums and what have you. And obviously the big thing is the striker position, but we'll get onto that in a bit. And, you know, everyone wants to be a football manager. Everyone knows best, but I think everyone is behind him and the feel good factor is back. Again, we overachieved, you know, not last season, the season prior to that. And there was a lot of expectation, unfair expectation, I think, last season. You know, we didn't hit the heights. We did flirt with relegation to a certain, I mean, mathematically, I know we discussed it towards the end, you know, were we ever going to get relegated? Possibly not, but we were down there. And at times it was quite frightening. And I thought, no, please, never again, League One, never again. Because if we end up back down there ever again, touch wood, I don't know what would happen, but I can't see that happening. So this season, I just think realism, optimism, and like you say, the feel-good factor is there. Obviously, the merchandise, the improvements to the pitch and the ground itself with regards to the standing area, the speaker systems. I think it doesn't quite put to bed what happened last season in the FA Cup match against your lot. But I don't want to talk about that again, do we, John? Or do you?
Always.
Probably. So, but I think the signs are good. And I think as well, Beale was never going to stand a chance. You mentioned it on many occasions. Could have won 10 games in a row, lost one. And obviously, the naysayers would have been out. But I think with Regis Bris, I think even if it does take a while to implement the playing style he wants, he'll be given that time and patience from the supporters. So, yeah.
It's an interesting situation as well because I think he clearly isn't their first choice. That's the elephant in the room. Will Still was absolutely the man that whatever the fuck he's called. But anyway, that's who that's
Yes.
who he wanted to that's
Yeah.
who he wanted as his manager. So the fact that they've gone for Regis Bris and he'd been managing a side in what was it? Was it in the second tier of French football?
Yes.
But like kind of middle to bottom end, I think. But I think look, if the philosophy's there, I think that's a big thing, isn't it? And that's where you start. And if you get the philosophy of the player right, and I think in order for a club to succeed and get promoted, there's a couple of things you need, but you need unity first of all. You need the whole club to be moving in the same direction, and then you need to try and be cleverer than the rest because you've also got, you know, it's probably a really good opportunity this year because the three clubs that are dropping down in Luton and Burnley and remind me, God, has it been that long?
Do you know, I'm struggling as well, to be fair.
Yeah. Sheffield United, of course.
Yeah.
But in those three sides coming down, they're not the same kind of mammoth task that you had with when Leicester and Leeds
Yeah.
and Southampton dropped down. Now, of course, Leeds are still down there, and Leeds are probably going to be up there as a favourite to win the league. But that opens up a potential automatic place. And then you've got the playoffs as an option. So, look, I think when looking at it more holistically, you know, Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton are not gonna be the same challenge that Leicester and Southampton and Leeds were last year. So I think that is something to really consider in terms of there's a real good opportunity there. But you just need to try and be smarter than everyone else. That's what Brighton and Brentford have done. And then if you can do that the right way and get up, it's about how you then stay up. But it's getting out the league's gonna be the task. Realistically, Anth, what does a good season look like for Sunderland?
For me, an amazing season would be the playoffs. I don't think we can expect to reach any higher than that. I mean, obviously, Leeds, as you mentioned earlier, are still down in the Championship. Yes, the Premier League vultures are circling with regards to their players, and obviously, who was it got snapped up the other day? Did West Ham snap one of their? Yeah, which was an interesting one because that means Jack Clark. Obviously, they were interested in Clark. Was it a winger? The winger from Leeds they've snapped up.
Somerville.
That's him. He some good goals and assists last season. So yeah, I just think the playoffs would be fantastic. I wouldn't be. I'm going to get a lot. I'm going to get a lot of stick for this, but I wouldn't be overly disappointed if we didn't make the playoffs. I think, like you said there, if the playing philosophy's there, and the players are invested in it, and they're trying hard, and everything's good behind the scenes, and we're moving in the right direction. If we flirt with the playoffs, if we almost make it, I think we can be forgiven. So I think the expectation isn't as high as last season, and that was probably down to our form towards the end of last season. So realistic expectations, which I'm quite happy about. But playoffs, I would be very, very happy with the playoffs. But if we were just outside the playoffs but give it a good fight and missed out, I'd be happy with that, to be fair.
Is there an argument to say that if you go up this year, would you be ready for a Premier League survival fight the year after? And do you really want to do what Sheffield United, Burnley, and Luton have done, which have shown that they just weren't ready? It was only interesting, the relegation battle in the Premier League, because Forest and Everton had point deductions. That's a crazy situation to be in, where like none of those three teams. I think the most they got was 30 points. Like,
Yep.
was one of them. So like 31 points kept you safe in the Premier League last year. Like,
Crazy.
could Sunderland really go up and get the points they need to stay up, and then build from there? If they were to go up this year, and I suppose that's another question: is that really what you'd want?
It's a case of be careful what you wish for, isn't it? I mean, when I look at the likes of Burnley and how they steamroll the Championship, Vincent Company had them playing some absolutely fantastic football. I mean, the Championship, which is a hell of a scrap, to be fair, and got promoted. And I mean, they got found out, didn't they? They got found out. So yeah, I mean, if we did go up, do we ever want to get near equaling our record lowest points tally, which thankfully I think Derby County took off us, didn't they, in the end? I think they did.
Yeah, you'd have to do
Yeah,
well. They did. You'd have to do
yeah.
well to beat that. Yeah.
So yeah, be careful what you wish for. But then, I mean, you look at Luton Town, and I mean, when you look at their facilities, etc., and I mean, I obviously they beat us in the playoffs, and it was a case of I've got no affinity to them, and they weren't my favourite team, but I was sort of rooting for them in a way, and they didn't. They put in some good performances, beat some good teams at home form. Almost got them over the line. They were sort of there or thereabouts towards the end of the season, but I don't know. You get a lot of it's 50-50, I suppose. You get a lot of supporters who say, well, why not take a risk? It's better to get promoted, and then if we do get relegated, we'll be more well prepared for the fight for promotion the following season. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out like that, does it? When you mentioned Sheffield United, I mean the damn good thrashing that you give them last season, my word, and that wasn't like an anomaly, was it? That was a regular occurrence as such. So again, it's just be careful what you wish for, I think.
Yeah, we beat them 13-1 on aggregate, if you think, because we
Wow,
beat them
there you
8-0 at
go,
their
man.
place, then 5-1 at home. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely wasn't an anomaly, especially playing us. No, I think the point you make about Luton's really interesting, because I think Luton's problem last year was that they like the games they didn't win. So the one I'll mention is the one I was sat in the family enclosure with the lads watching the game, and Luton were 4-2 up with half an hour to go and didn't win the game. You can't score 4
Yeah.
goals away from home and
No.
not win. And like, as good as their football was, they had too many scenarios where they put themselves in positions to win games. And it doesn't matter how good the side is. Like, again, it was I think it was against Arsenal. They pushed them close. Man City. I'm sure that, like, Man United. I'm sure there's also Liverpool. That was it. Like, they should have beaten Liverpool at home and they didn't. And and the thing is, what's that? 6 points, and all of a sudden, that might have been enough to keep them up in the end. So you can't put yourself in positions to win games and then not take all 3 points. And as tough as the Premier League is, and as much as I agree, Anth, I think, as a neutral, you probably wanted them to do well. They just didn't deliver when they needed to. They didn't get that result. Now it'll be really interesting to see how they do this year, and whether they bounce straight back, and maybe they learn some lessons going up. And I think the manager there's done an incredible job on the resources that they've had.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the one argument. So in terms of, do you really want to get promoted and then not be in a position to maybe stay up, I
Yep.
suppose. So we talked about kind of good season for you. You've said kind of, basic. I suppose, is it more you just want to be in that conversation come the start of April?
That for me, that would be it. I think, like I say, if we fell short towards the end, if we were there, as you say, around April, and we were pushing and we were playing, it doesn't necessarily have to be great football, to be fair, but if we were playing a style of football that we were comfortable with, because I think under Mowbray we had a certain style. Under Beale, I've got no idea what the hell was going on, to be fair. But I think,
He's just gathering feedback, Anth.
well, Gavin, feedback, yeah. I mean, 3-0 at home to your biggest rivals in the FA Cup, and yeah, good feedback. That, what a toss, man. Anyway, sorry. Sorry if you're listening, Michael. I hope you're having a nice cup of tea and a digestive biscuit and enjoying the Olympics or whatever you do when you're on the dole. Yeah, I just think if we're in it or thereabouts towards April, a bit later in the season, I think fantastic. And I just think Regis Lebris might surprise us. I mean, I know a lot of people are saying, managers come from overseas, some hit the ground running, some don't. It's a massive risk. Of course it is. It's a massive risk, huge risk, but he's invested. And like you say, he obviously wasn't first choice, but he doesn't seem arsed. He's just getting on with it, and he seems quietly self-assured, and he's like there's a common presence, and I can't. I've seen him get interviewed after a few pre-season friendlies, and I was impressed. And I'm looking forward. Obviously, I want us to win down at Cardiff, but I'm looking forward to seeing the post-match interview. If we get walloped 4-0, I mightn't be overly sort of keen on it, but I'm just interested to see how he is, regardless of the result. How he talks, how he puts his message across. So it'll be interesting to see and hear.
And it's interesting you talk about not being asked about not being first choice. Eddie Howe wasn't first choice at Newcastle, if you remember. It was Unai Emery that that the owners were after, and they screwed up that approach basically. And then I say they were left with Eddie Howe. I think there was still, he's shown, hasn't he, how valuable he's been.
Yeah.
And actually, I would argue that, and we'll never know, right? Because it's a sliding doors moment. But I'm not sure we stay up if Unai Emery gets the job, because I think Howe had the right experience and he had the right mentality for that particular fight. Now, when Emery went in at Villa, he's done great there, but I don't think they were ever they weren't at the same risk of relegation as Newcastle were. Like, we were gone. Like, we had 7 points after 14 games. We were fucked. We were going. So I think that's probably the one thing I would say about it is that maybe something that Regis Lebris really values, the opportunity to take the job. And Luke Edwards said it, didn't he, on the pod a couple of months ago, that Sunderland should be one of the most sought after jobs that's going. Like, it really should be. So, I think credit to obviously they brought this guy in. Let's see what he does for you. And yeah, I suppose for yourself, let's hope you're in the conversation for the podcast. If you go up, it'll make the podcast much more interesting next season, won't it?
My God.
But yeah, it certainly will, because we'll not be talking about necessarily similar battles in the league, but there'll be a lot of context what we talk about in two derbies and everything else. But okay, so Anth, just massive thank you for kind of going through Sunderland's season for us. And where's your personal prediction? Where do Sunderland finish in the league?
I don't know. Do you know what? It all depends on transfer ins and outs. I just think if we can sign a striker, because obviously you've got Alexandre Mendy, who has voiced he wants to come to Sunderland, obviously, with a whole takeover at the club. Kylian Mbappe and his family were involved, etc., etc. And then there's Ike Ugbo, younger player who was on loan at Sheffield Wednesday last season. I think he scored about 7, 8, 9 goals. So a bit better than what we've got now. If we can get a striker, and get them settled and get them adapting to the style of play Lebris wants, I think we could get 6th, because the likes of Dan Nick, with the core of last season's team, is still here, and it's a good core. I mean, the likes of Dan Neil, who I don't think gets the plaudits and pats on the back he deserves. I mean, he was phenomenal against Marseille. Apparently, his passing, his vision. I think he's ready to take the step up. I mean, he's still a young lad as well. So I'll put my neck on the line and say, my heart says 6, but my head says 8th. So yeah, might scrape the playoffs. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Okay. All right. Well, Anth, thank you very much for the preview. Listeners and viewers, we're going to leave it there. Another reminder, Mama Lane Crofts. Check it out on Facebook and on Instagram. 10% off your first order if you mention the Northeast Divide podcast. And if you've enjoyed the video or enjoyed listening, please rate or like. Leave us comments, give us feedback. We'd love to hear what you think of what we're doing. And again, we're available on Instagram and X as well. So check us out there. This has been the Northeast Divide podcast. Thank you and goodbye.